Here's your host, Alex Garrett.
Well, as you know, this past weekend, CBS had the honor of carrying the Super Bowl 58. And someone who I'm sure, as part of the network as a vice president, was there for many other CBS Super Bowls. I thought he'd want to weigh in on this week and how his network performed. Paul Friedman, welcome back to the Alex Garrett Podcast Network.
Thank you so much. It's great to be with you again.
We'll talk about the adventures of Danny Green because I hear there's some updates with his adventures. But first, your thoughts on how your, the network you were vice president for performed on Super Bowl weekend.
Well, I was a vice president and a creative director in the marketing department, what we call the on-air promotion department. We did work with sports through the years, but primarily I was not in the sports division. But of course, I have opinions as to how things went. I think for the most part, the coverage was quite good. You know, it's interesting because CBS had over 100 and I think it's 160 some odd cameras throughout covering the Super Bowl. So they didn't really miss a trick. Most of what you saw, obviously, was coverage that they were able to get clearly as a result of having all the cameras and having everybody standing by ready at any moment to record something.
Since we're talking about this, it's one of the most, I think it's the most watched Super Bowl. I mean, it was a big ratings weekend for CBS. As an alum, if you will, how does that make you feel that your network carried the most watched Super Bowl?
To me, it's spectacular. Obviously, the Super Bowl has become something that is a national holiday, as we all know. People put aside all their differences and they just want to watch an incredible game. There was so much leading up to this game. Of course, the Kansas City Chiefs were extremely popular, extremely successful, have a whole group of players that everybody wants to see and cheer for. The same thing with San Francisco. San Francisco had a vaunted offense, and people were excited to see the clash of these two titans. We can't underestimate the Taylor Swift factor, the Travis Kelce factor, all the things that went into that. I mean, don't forget, a week earlier, Taylor Swift was at the Grammys, where she had a large platform. There was a lot of talk about her being in Japan and flying in for the game. So there's a lot that went into the success of this show, of this broadcast, actually, but also, most importantly, I think it was the drama of the game. To me, to some extent, it kind of sputtered at the beginning as far as the game. There were several plays that were missed opportunities for both teams. There were fumbles. But as the game got going, it was like a car that warms up. It got faster and faster and more exciting. Now, there's absolutely no way that anybody could have turned away from that game. That's the cool thing about it. So the coverage was tremendous, but also the drama inherent in the game was there all the way until the very, very end. Of course, we had overtime, which is something spectacular, and the network always cheers for.
Absolutely. Now, I've learned over the years it's about $30 to $40 million a spot to advertise. How much was the average spot this year? Do you know, during the commercial breaks?
No, the commercial breaks ran for $7 million for a 30-second spot. Now, that doesn't take into account what it costs to create that spot. So you can spend maybe $2 million to produce a spot. Then you've got to give another $1 million or so to a celebrity. So before you know it, you're $10 million as an advertiser into something like this. The Super Bowl, gets $7 million a spot this year, which is up considerably from previous years, which was $3 million and then $5 million. And that's a considerable sum.
You know, your network's been on a tear. I mean, you had the Grammys 2 weeks ago with Taylor there. I mean, as a creative director, as a marketer, how would you have approached this season? Because it was sort of like a big deal the first few months of 2024 for you guys at CBS.
Absolutely. You know, of course, things were delayed because of the strike. It's almost as if the season got started in earnest after the Super Bowl. So because of the strike, the writer's strike, the actor's strike, a lot of production was delayed. Scripts hadn't been written. Production hadn't gone in. Then, of course, you had the December holiday situation. So pretty much people were gearing up And then I think for CBS, it's like the season began in earnest after the Super Bowl. Now, the interesting thing about the NFL package, the Sunday package for CBS, is that it's a tremendous promotional platform. We're not just talking about the Super Bowl. We're talking about throughout the year. Throughout the year, an NFL game on Sunday allows the network to put promos in there that will then advertise all the shows they have upcoming for the rest of the week and beyond. So in this case, of course, the Super Bowl is a tremendous platform for CBS to launch and promote its shows.
Well, obviously, you're looking from a creative mindset. So let me ask you this: watching this whole weekend, watching the last couple of weeks, any memory of from your career at CBS come to mind when you watch all of this in front of you on the screen on CBS?
Well, I'll remember, this goes back a few years, many years actually now, but the premiere of the second Survivor, I believe they went to Australia, if I'm not mistaken, and that was launched after the Super Bowl, 2001. So what we did in the Super Bowl was actually have the survivors on the plane, ready to either be thrown out of the plane or parachute out of the plane or land on this foreign soil. So there was this, within the Super Bowl itself, it was gearing up for the premiere of that season of Survivor. That was pretty memorable to me because everything had to be timed perfectly so that it appeared as if the survivors are being dropped on this foreign soil just when the Super Bowl ended.
All right. Well, talk about the resources used for something like that, because obviously you have some big endeavors as the creative director and VP, right? I mean, I have to imagine so.
Yeah, there's a lot of resources available when you're trying to launch something as big as a franchise like Survivor or a new show, or remind people that there's only X number of shows left, for example, for young Sheldon, to get people. Our job is like a carnival barker. As marketers, as promotion people, we got to get them in the tent. We want to get people to tune in, to be aware, to be enticed, and then watch the program.
Now, some might say, well, CBS is a big network. Of course, they're going to know the programming. But I guess the whole point of promotions for a big network is that, maybe there's that one or two people that may not know what's coming up next, right?
Well, yeah, I can't. You can't really rely on people knowing what you are selling them, especially in this media universe. It's so diversified now. There's so many options for people. It's very important that you have an identity, A, as a network, and B, that the show itself has an identity, and then you can create a following for it. Of course, it has to be entertaining. It has to be good. It has to be well written, well acted, and it has to be in a good time slot where people can find it. More and more and more people are not just tuning in for a particular show. I mean, this is obvious. Nowadays, people have a choice when they want to watch the programming. So CBS is now, of course, partnered with Paramount Plus, and just as a lot of the other networks have their own partnerships with streaming companies, media companies, so people have an opportunity to see shows when they want to see them. But as far as recognition, availability, that's the most important thing. What is the recognition of that show, and are you interested in seeing it?
Paul, you spent 3 decades as CBS VP of Creative Direction and Marketing. Are you glad you're not competing with streaming? I mean, do you feel like having it on television was sort of the golden years, if you will, during your time there, and not having to compete with streaming platforms?
Well, it certainly was the golden years, yes, in many ways. But streaming is now up. You have to accept it. It's part of the reality of television, and that's why streaming is an important piece of CBS network, Paramount Plus, just as the other networks all have their own streaming services. But you're competing with companies like Netflix, Disney, Hulu. So it's a challenge. It's a big challenge. But right now, there's a melding of the two: the CBS network, BET, and of course Nickelodeon, the Nickelodeon networks, MTV networks are all under the Paramount banner. So if you go to Paramount Plus, if you pay that extra fee, you can see a lot of the programs right there in one spot. And that's where streaming is right now.
Now you were under the Viacom years. They still own CBS. Is that correct?
Yes. It is controlled by Viacom, and CBS have merged once again. They were separate companies. They came back together again. So yes, Viacom and CBS, it's now all under the name of Paramount.
I don't know if you're able to talk about this, but what was it like in the Redstone years? Because obviously he was a big name associated with CBS, and you were there during that time. What was that like under the Sumner Redstone leadership?
Of course, I didn't have personal contact with Mr. Redstone. He was someone who was very, very astute when it came to business, and he wanted to see that both companies, when they were separate, Viacom and CBS, succeed. Now, back then, a number of years ago, the thinking was that the old networks, CBS, NBC, ABC, were kind of going to chug along, and the MTV networks were the up-and-coming ones. But it turned out, in a very humorous way, that CBS was a standard bearer and was the one that was still making a ton of money. Now, that was for two reasons. One, because of advertiser dollars that CBS was taking in. And then, of course, CBS made a deal many years into the process by saying to cable companies and to satellite companies, look, you have to pay to use our programming as well. So CBS started getting money not just from advertisers, but from the cable companies as well, and subscribers. So subscribers ended up paying a little bit to be able to see CBS programming on the cable networks.
Another media industry executive predicted the Super Bowl might become behind a paywall. Speaking of subscribers, do you ever see that happening? Is that a paywall possibility, or will the Super Bowl always be free for consumption?
Well, when you say will something ever happen, I think I don't know that anybody expected that Amazon was going to get Thursday Night Football. And they paid $1 billion. A number of years ago, CBS had Thursday Night Football. In fact, between the years of, 2014 and 2017, CBS actually carried Thursday Night Football. But then Amazon paid a ton of money. I believe they're paying $1 billion a year. That's a lot of money to carry it. Now, as far as the Super Bowl going behind a paywall, the thing is, there's so much money that the networks can provide for the NFL that you go behind a paywall, it's probably not going to be as lucrative for them. But in a sense, Paramount Plus is a paywall. So if you watch the Super Bowl not on CBS and you watched on Paramount Plus, you were paying a fee to see it, essentially. But exclusively going behind a paywall, I think we're a few years away from that.
I don't know. With Goodell at the helm, I don't know what his plan is next. It seems like he's always trying to make deals, not so much for the fans, but for the network, for the NFL. That's for sure. All right, Paul Friedman. One last thing before we get into what your trajectory is looking like with the Adventures of Danny Green. Sean McManus was mentioned and really praised by Jim Nantz. Now, you didn't really know him though during your years at CBS, correct?
No, I didn't know him. I didn't work with Sean directly. But I must say that he's retiring now. He's 68 years old. He's going to be replaced by his longtime president. So there's going to be consistency at CBS. There will be continuity in leadership. David Bernstein, he's the president of CBS Sports. So I don't think you're going to see the division or CBS Sports skipping a beat. But it's interesting you bring that up because CBS is in pretty good shape right now. They have the NFL under contract until 2033. They have College March Madness, NCAA, for 8 more years. The PGA till 2030, and those are some really substantial franchises. CBS plans to spend over $30 billion in the next couple of years to pay for these franchises.
And look how much they're getting back. We believe, right? I mean, they're probably getting a lot back in profit.
Absolutely, and I might mention that CBS had the NFL, had football for many, many years, from 1970 to 1993. And then they were outbid by Fox. Fox was a very small network, but because they got the NFL, once again, because it was a promotional platform for them, they were able to build up Fox Network. Now, CBS got the NFL back in 1998. Now, if you think about it, shows like Survivor were launched in the year 2000. CSI, The Big Bang Theory, Two and a Half Men, all those shows came in part because of the result of CBS having football on Sunday. So from 1998 until the present time, CBS got the AFC ticket.
And it's so interesting to see some of them sometimes carry the NFC also, but they are primarily the AFC channel. They have the AFC Championship as well.
And yeah, I gotta say, this is an interesting thing. You know how Vegas used to be something that the NFL didn't want to go near because they didn't want to be perceived as their games might be influenced by gamblers. Well, that of course has all changed. Years ago, when we had Sunday football, and we, for example, CSI Vegas, we couldn't show in a promo a playing card or even a marquee of a gambling place. So that's how far away they wanted to stay from gambling. Of course, all that has changed now, and gambling has become prevalent. And for the first time ever, the Super Bowl was held in Las Vegas.
Yeah, it was, for a sport that tries to stay clean, it's very, and of course the Chiefs and Niner players were able to bet right after the game was over. They could go back to their betting ways if they were any bettors on those teams. It's very fascinating how we've gone from the Rose era of banning him for gambling to this. I don't know. I just feel like that comparison had to be made. And you guys also carried baseball for a long time too.
Yes, CBS had baseball for quite some time. When you look at it now, everybody has to really admit that America's pastime, baseball, has been eclipsed by the NFL. That certainly is the sport that everybody in America, I think, has turned to. And to some extent, baseball has been a citizen.
Obviously, you've had a 30-year career, and we'll talk about what you can and cannot do in promos. Did you ever take risks? Did you ever try and skirt the edge, if you will, of what corporate wanted you to do?
Well, yes. I mean, the idea is to come up with something that's going to be breakthrough, that's going to get noticed. And it's not that there's this big entity corporate that's going to put their thumb on you and tell you can't do something. They always encouraged us to come up with something different, something new. And then they would look at it and go, well, maybe we're pushing the envelope a little too far there. Or maybe we can try that in the future. But we were never told, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. There were people, of course, at the highest level of the corporation who were mindful that certain franchises, if you will, would be protected and that we weren't going to embarrass the company. The idea was controversy good, but crisis bad. We didn't mind if people were talking about the shows and there was some kind of controversy. But if it reached a crisis point, meaning there were people walking around with placards outside of CBS headquarters, that was something you really didn't want.
Well, I feel like was that ever the case? I mean, I don't remember any stories like that, but was there ever a case like that or not really, right? I mean,
I can't really recall now, but there were times when CBS became a target from special interest groups, as all the network did.
Well, it's always interesting talking to you because I feel like there's such a lineage and a heritage with CBS, and you're here telling us all about it. Of course, 60 Minutes comes to mind because they always follow football on Sunday night, and 60 Minutes is still ticking years later. How about that?
Yeah, that's not going away anytime soon. As long as there's problems and there's issues out there, there's stories to tell. I think 60 Minutes will maintain its dominance as the premier news magazine show.
One last thought. James Brown doing CBS News on a weeknight and then NFL Sunday. I never thought of him as a news guy, but he fills that role in pretty well, I think, on weeknights if Nora O'Donnell's not there. So very interesting to see him be able to do both, versatile like that.
It's interesting you should say. For a number of years, Sean McManus, he was president of CBS News and CBS Sports. For 6 years, he did that. Previously, someone who did that at ABC was Arledge. Now, so you wonder, what is it? I mean, sports is immediate, sports is spontaneous, and sports also requires a certain news edge to it. So but sports has an entertainment aspect to it that news maybe has, but news isn't supposed to be entertaining per se. News is supposed to be informative, clear, and really not have opinions injected into it. But it's interesting that news and sports oftentimes can be managed by sort of the same person.
Well, yeah, and also if a sports idol makes news, like Tiger not matching up with Nike, that becomes a news story. So there's those things as well. But I want to get to you now, Paul Friedman, because since we last talked, the adventure of Danny Green has gained a little more of a journey. Tell us about what's been going on since we last talked.
Right. Well, the book I wrote is called The Unexpected Danny Green, and it's about a boxer who comes up from Mississippi, is successful in New York. Eventually, he gets into the literary world as a writer and comes out to Hollywood. So the book itself is doing very well. It's selling well on Amazon. It's getting great reviews. I would encourage your listeners to check it out. I think it's very entertaining and people will enjoy it. And at the moment, we're actually almost done with the audiobook. So that's going to be out there. That's going to be available. But interestingly, as a result of that book and as a result of going on a promotional tour for the book, I had an opportunity to talk to some gentlemen who had a sports show in Missouri, in Columbia, Missouri. And as a result, I've been doing, interestingly, a entertainment feature for them every Friday. It's on KFRU radio, and it's a lot of fun. I report on what's happening in Hollywood, upcoming events, sometimes movie reviews, and it's been very, very interesting. It's KFRU radio. And New York time, I believe it's 3:00, 3:15 every day. Every Friday.
Very cool. I know you love that, still being in the media world. I'm sure you love that radio hit every week.
It's a lot of fun. I do enjoy it, and it's just great. It's great. That's as an extension of the book. The book itself, as I said, selling well. Hopefully, we'll sell a few more copies. And if your listeners are interested, it's at Amazon, amazon.com. You can check out The Unexpected Danny Green.
All right. One last thing before, I love that I love bringing on people who are evolving their book and really growing it, because that's part of having one leg up, is to keep growing that. One other thing about you, though, is you love boxing. That's kind of why you wrote this book, right? There's sort of that love of the sport that you want to write about.
Yes, I did watch a lot of boxing matches. I wouldn't say that I'm a boxer, but I have gotten in the ring on occasion. But I had a teacher, a coach, who used to sort of school me on boxing, and we'd watch matches together. We'd watch television together, and he taught me a lot about the sport. So when I wrote the book, I had a lot of references that I went to. I did a lot of research on it. And even though it's fiction, there's a lot of historical characters that are interwoven into the book. So at the beginning, I said it could be a true story. It's not a true story, but there's a lot of truth in the story, in the fiction of the book. But, the great thing about writing that book, and as I said, sort of reinventing myself as a result of leaving CBS, was look at the kind of doors that it's opened. I've had an opportunity to talk to you, for example, and we've gone into wide-ranging conversations, and it's tremendous. And it's opened up a whole new basic universe for me, going from being a creative director and being a VP at CBS, and now with the book, it's out there, it's touching people's lives, and it's created tremendous opportunities, opened up a whole new world for me. So I thank you It's been great talking to you, and it led to my my entertainment radio piece that I'm doing every Friday.
Well, we played a small part in that. That is a big honor, and I'd love to have you back on and talk media, because you are a guru as far as I'm concerned about media. You've been in for 3 decades, and you know it. So come back. We'll maybe do a different conversation on the climate of media down the road if you'd like, in 2024.
That would be great. I'd love to talk to you about that, about where I see things going and the status of the business right now, because it's in flux. It's in major flux, and CBS as a network, CBS as an entity, and Paramount the company is in play right now.
Wow. Well, we'll get to that maybe before March Madness, and kick off March Madness with some conversation about the media climate. How about that?
Okay.
Love having you, Paul Friedman. Thanks again. And the book, you can link it on Amazon as well. Paul, thanks again so much.
Thank you.
All right, let me stop the recording.